Hi, grade 6 students. I hope that you're all doing good. Welcome to a new science lecture video. In this slide, I will be making a quick review about cells, which are the basic units of structure and of function of all living things. When I say living things or organisms, I mean people, animals, and plants. Some of these living things are microorganisms. This means that they cannot be seen by the eyes. You need a microscope to observe and to see them. Other organisms like us are multicellular organisms. So our bodies are made of an endless and a huge number of cells working all together. There are two different types of cells. Let's take the first one. As you can see, there is a cell wall and there is a cell membrane. So in here, we're talking about a plant cell. Let's see the different parts of this cell. First, we have the cell wall that gives the cell its shape and protects it. Second, we have the cell membrane that acts like a door to let things in and out the cell. Here is the nucleus, which is the control center that controls the activities in the cell. This is the vacuole, which is the container that stores food and water for the cell. As you can see, there are discs of chlorophyll in this organelle. So these are the chloroplasts. Chloroplasts help the plant to catch sunlight energy. This sunlight will be used for the food making process happening in plants. The food making process is called photosynthesis. If you still remember, green plants produce their food by themselves, and for making their food, they need sunlight energy. Chlorophyll or chloroplasts help the plant to take this energy from the sun. Here are the mitochondria, which are the powerhouses of the cell. They produce energy by respiration. The second type of cells is the animal cell. With its different parts, we will start with the cell membrane that let things in and out. Second, we have the vacuole. An animal cell usually contain several small vacuoles to store food and water for the cell. Here is the nucleus or the control center, the mitochondria. Animal cells do not show a cell wall, and also they do not show chloroplasts. So two types of cells. In the second side, we have this animal cell. Animal cells build people and animals, and plant cells build plants. Animals and plants can be multicellular organisms or microorganisms. Let's take a look on these. Here we have these cute single-celled organisms or unicellular organisms are everywhere, from deep oceans to high mountains. These organisms are made of one cell, and most of the unicellular organisms are microscopic and they are impossible to be seen or spot with the naked eye. Here we have this is a single-celled organism or a unicellular organism called paramecium. And you can here see the cilia that help the paramecium move. When we say living things, we mean people, animals, and plants. Flowering plants, for example, are made out of plant cells, right? And plants are living things, as I just mentioned. Living things reproduce. What do we mean by reproduction or reproduce? Reproduction is making babies. Animals reproduce. They make more organisms of themselves, of the same species. People also reproduce, also do plants. Seeds are the baby plants. So again, plants also reproduce. They grow seeds. How do plants reproduce and how do they make their seeds? We will see in this lesson. So seeds, as I said, are the baby plants. These babies are formed in the flower of a plant. So the flower is the reproductive organ of a plant. Here are different examples of flowers. Flowers are the reproductive organs of the plant. In these flowers, seeds will be formed. And once the seeds are in the soil, in the needed conditions, new plants will grow. This way, a new plant is made or produced out of an old one. How do plants make seeds? All flowers parts are engaged in the reproduction process. So all of the parts of a flower, here in front of you, you have a flower with its different parts. All of the parts are engaged and they help in reproduction. Let's start with the petals. Petals are the colorful parts of a flower, and they have a beautiful smell too, to attract insects to the plant. Second, we have the sepals. So sepals look like leaves. We say that they are leaf-like structures. They look like leaves, but they are not leaves. And they protect the flower as it grows. Look at this bud. So this bud is protected by which part of the plant? They are protected by the sepals. The sepals protect the bud from predators and from bad weather conditions. Then we have the stamen. Can you see this line? This white line with the yellow head? This is the male part of a flower. It consists of two parts, the anther, which is the head, and the filament, which is the body. In the middle, you will see the female part standing with its three different parts. So the female is called a pistil or a carpel. Pistil or carpel. The pistil or the carpel consists of a stigma. This line is the style, and down the fat part is the ovary of the flower. Inside the ovary, you will see the ovules. So here are the ovules hidden inside the ovary of the flower. Again, a flower shows different parts engaged and they help in the plant reproduction. So all of these parts will help in making the baby or the seed inside the flower. Here is a real picture of a flower. The petals of the flower are yellow. As I said, petals are colorful. So They are colorful. They have beautiful and different colors. They have beautiful smell to attract animals. Many petals, the group of petals is called the corolla. The corolla. So the group of petals is the corolla. Then we have the sepals of the flower. These sepals protect the bud. They look like leaves. Usually they are green. And the group of sepals is the calyx. So the calyx is the group of sepals. The calyx is the group of sepals, and the corolla is the group of petals. Here we have the stamen with its head, the anther, and its body, the filament. And then we have the pistil, which is standing in the middle with its stigma. This line is the style, and then the ovary. So here there is the stigma. Then this line is the style, and here this fat part is the ovary. Can you spot the ovules inside the ovary? Here are the ovules. The white things are the ovules inside the ovary. The stamen is the male part, while the pistil is the female part. You can clearly see the blue color and the pink color to help you compare between these two parts. Stamen is the male part. It's the boy, the male part in a flower. The pistil is the girl. In the male part, you will see yellow powder, which is the pollen on the head, on the anther. So here, the head holds yellow powder. Pay attention to the word pollen, which is the yellow powder. The stigma holds the pollen grain, it leads to the ovary, contains the eggs. Okay. The pollen found on the anther need to be moved to the stigma and then down to the style, and after that to the ovary. Okay, here is the anther. As I told you, usually the anther is yellow, holding the pollen grains. Here is the ovary. The ovary contains the ovules. The pollen found on the anther needs to be moved to the stigma. So from here, from the anther to the stigma. From the male anther, from the head of the boy, to the female stigma, to the head of the girl. That's what we call pollination. Pollination is when pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma. Pollination is the first step of reproduction, and it's again the transport of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. So look, pollens, they look at here. Pollen grains move to the stigma and then down to the ovary to meet the ovules. When the pollen grains meet the ovules, we will get a seed. So let me write pollen grains plus ovules will give us seeds. And that's what we want, right? The purpose or the objective of this process is to form the seeds, the babies inside the ovary. For this reason, the pollen must meet the ovules inside the ovary. And transferring the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma is called pollination. Who makes pollination or who helps in pollination Here is the job of the pollinators or the pollen helpers. Can you see the yellow powder on the bee's body? This yellow powder is, look at the bee's body. So these are pollen grains. Pollen grains. Pollen grains will be moved by the bee from the anther to the stigma. Here is a butterfly moving pollen grains from an anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower. Same idea, same species, same type of flowers. And that's all for today. A flower shows different parts. We have the colored parts, which are the petals. A group of petals is called a corolla. Then we have the sepals. Sepals look like leaves, and their job is to protect the flower as it grows. The group of sepals is the calyx. Then we have the female part in a flower, which is the carpel or the pistil. The female consists of 3 parts: stigma, style, ovary, stigma, style, ovary, and finally, we have the boy or the male part, which is the stamen with 2 parts, anther and filament. The first step of reproduction is pollination. What's pollination? It's when pollen grain is transferred from the male anther, from the head of the boy to the head of the girl. Okay, that's pollination, is when we move pollen from here to here. Then when the pollen grain reaches the stigma, it goes down through the style to the ovary to meet the ovules. Okay, if you still have any question about the lesson, I'll be happy to answer. My office hour is on Tuesday at 4 o'clock Lebanon time. So I'll be happy to see you and to answer all of your questions. Take care and see you soon.